I just actually started the recording right now. We're going to record from this point on. So it can be repeated, and we'll do a playback. That's an excellent idea. Thank you for reminding me, Bonnie.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Well, like you, Dr. Missy, I've gone through two actually three abusers, starting with my brother. I think it sounds like it's possibly, it's like a cycle. And unfortunately, I've been a pretty good target. My brother is has some level of sociopathy, and then to my husband and a relationship I had after that, which I'm still dealing with to this day, a decade later, trying to protect my family, and so it's been really, really tough and feels very alienating and isolating. And I'm trying to get through those phases you were talking about and trying to grow, because I feel like I used to be a different person and I've lost who I am. I don't know who I am anymore, and it's sad. And
well, at the end of this call, with y'all's permission, I'm going to pray over you guys, and God's going to do something really cool for you guys. And I guarantee you, you're going to see a difference. And it's going to start you down a process and down a road. And the reason I'm saying it's 100% effective 100% of the time, this is why I invited my peeps on this call. A lot of the women in my group have gone through abuse, and they're working their way into inner healing, but they have had such advancement in the last, Dana, you're on the call. I see you're on the call. How long have you been in this group with me?
Since July the 7th.
Tell them a little bit about what you've experienced to help encourage these people.
It's phenomenal. I never would have guessed it's possible to leap up that I have just from the obedience of sitting under a faithful leader. And Dr. Missy is very faithful. She generously gives everything that the Lord gives to her to us. And then it's already so impregnated with breakthrough. All we have to do is swallow it, and our lives are changed. I mean, fundamentally changed. I engaged with who I am on a level I haven't in 30 years. I mean, I thought I had lost myself altogether, but she called it out, grabbed hold of it, and I am in my spot doing what I ought to be doing. Thank you, Jesus.
So anyway, with that, and I'm going to just tell you point blank, it's incorporated with the Word of God, but the Word of God is 100% effective 100% of the time. But again, tonight, I want to meet you guys at a point of need without, making anybody turn off or feel uncomfortable. And let's just start there. Let's just start there, because I think I don't have any right to minister to anybody on any level unless I have a relationship formulated first, unless you know my heart. And I think that's just being honest in any type of relationship. We want to know who we're dealing with and what they're all about. And so that's me. That's how I am, at least. But my background, I was sexually abused from the ages of 7 to 10 years old by a family member who's outside of my immediate family. My parents weren't aware of that, but it impacted me at such deep levels and I didn't think it bothered me. I thought I was fine. I thought everybody that's crazy, that sounds. I thought everybody went through that. But apparently, sometimes some people are targeted because usually the pure in heart are targeted, to be honest with you. People that are just pure goodness, or not like I'm pure goodness, but people that are pure and naive kind of in a sense, and we kind of aimlessly walk into it because we trust people. We just trust people. And so I ended up going, and I went after that. I got smart at about 3 years into it, and I realized that if I stayed near my dad, my perpetrator couldn't get to me. And my parents, they started seeing me act out. I was getting in trouble in school because obviously at that age, at 10 years old, your mind's not capable of processing that type of abuse. It's processing things like that and understanding things like that. But I had a teacher who would keep me after school and ask me, "Are you being abused at home?" And I'm thinking, no, I'm not being abused at home. I'm being abused outside of my family. But I didn't want to get in trouble, and I didn't know if I'd get my parents in trouble. I didn't understand all that. So I progressed forward, and at 16 years old, I started getting into binge drinking and overeating and bulimia. I had a bulimia eating disorder for about 12 years because that was the one thing I could control. My body was the one thing I could control through eating. Nobody could hurt me. Nobody could touch me. But I could control it myself, and nobody could control that but me. And so about the age of 19, I started dating my perpetrator. And my first love in high school before I met my perpetrator was very, very loving. I never had an abuser. I'd never encountered abuse before. As far as physical abuse, I'd done the sexual, but not the physical. And I broke up with my first love in high school and started dating my perpetrator right afterwards. And it was like a freight train, man. I didn't even know what was coming around the tracks with that one. And he'd catch me in the hallway and start just berating me for no reason. And then I was like, what did I do? And then he'd twist my words against me and twist it around like I had done something. And he'd making me think I was crazy, kind of a thing. When in reality, the real truth of the matter was that he was just a manipulator and a great con artist. And then at 22, my dad had passed away. And I'm gonna mute everybody now because we've got a pretty significant amount of people on here so that we don't have things interrupting. And I'm gonna unmute only Bonnie and myself, okay?
Okay.
Okay, Bonnie, you're unmuted only as well as myself. And so I want to let everybody know at the end of the call, we're going to open it up for questions or whatever you may have. But right now, I'm going to continue on. And so if you have anything significant that you feel like needs to be addressed, you can unmute yourself with *6. So going on with the story really quickly, and then I'll get back into the trauma cycles, is that anyway, I stepped into that abusive relationship at 22. My dad passed away. And as long as my dad was alive, this person was always very respectful of me. But the minute my dad died, he turned into Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and he was an addict. He abused drugs. He abused alcohol. I was drinking on the side. And then it was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And then I started, about a month after my dad died, I just came to this place where I realized that I've been raised better than that, and I didn't need to put up with that. I thought, I can stand up for myself, and I'm just going to get out of this. And it wasn't that easy. Obviously, that some of you probably experienced that. But I just realized that I needed to get new playmates and new playgrounds, basically. And so we all hung out in couples, et cetera, et cetera. And so there were like 3 of us as couples, and the girls would call each other every day, and I guess the guys hung out or whatever. But the girls started calling me at work one day, about a month after my dad died, and I was like, hey, this is nothing personal. Don't ever call me again. And I hung up the phone, clicked. And about 10 minutes after that, the next girl called. A next friend called, actually. Pardon me. And I told her the same thing. And then about 20 minutes after that, my ex-boyfriend called. I am so sorry, y'all. And he said, our friends think you're crazy, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, and this is great that you called so-and-so, because you've got I get off work in about 6 hours. So you've got about 6 hours to think about what you want to do with your life. And I said, in about 6 hours, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about this, and you're going to decide whether you want to stay in this addiction or whether you want to go to counseling and you want to work this out with me. But you've got 6 hours to figure this out. I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye, click. Phone. And that was the most empowering thing I ever did for myself. I thought, wow, I can do that. I can do that. That felt good. I thought, wow, that was a first for me in my whole life, actually. Because from that point, or before that point, I'd let everybody run over me like a doormat. I never stood up for myself. I was afraid of confrontation. And now confrontation is one of my strongest assets because I'll deal with things right off the bat. So I tell you that to shift over into the scientific side of this real quick, and then we're going to talk to you from the heart, which is what we started. So this is probably good. If any of you have actually logged in, hopefully you can see my screen right now, and there's a form or a diagram on my screen that's called the development of the mind and how we mature. Okay, what we as human beings need to mature. We have to have these things met in order for us to advance, in order for us to progress into our dreams, in order for us to be healthy human beings, healthy, productive people on the planet. So what I've done, and this is going to be in my second book. It's called Fragmented. Hopefully it will be out in 2019. But it was also in my dissertation on fragmentation or disassociation. That's what I got my expertise in, so I could deal with people with abuse. But I compared and I proved to my professors that fragmentation does exist because of Maslow's hierarchy of needs versus Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development being hindered. And what hinders those two hierarchies, or an individual from moving through those two hierarchies at the same time, which is what we all have to do, is trauma cycles. That's what interrupts our ability to maneuver forward, okay? So I'm going to tell you first what Maslow's hierarchy of needs are, and then I'm going to read to you what Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development are, and then I'm going to discuss what they create if they're interrupted. So the first level in Maslow's hierarchy of needs that we absolutely have to have met in order to advance to the next level. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, by the way, are based upon one another, meaning they're line upon line, precept upon precept. So you can't go to the next level unless the first level's met. So the first level is physiological needs, which are air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction. Have to have that. We can't move to the second level. Second level is safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. The third level is a sense of love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, a sense of connection. The fourth level is a healthy esteem, healthy self-esteem, which is respect for self, which brings, by the way, respect for other people if you respect yourself. Healthy level self-esteem for self, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. And the fifth level is identity. It's self-actualization, where it's the desire to become the most and the best us possible. Where we've found out our dream, we've found out the pathway of how to get there, we feel good about ourselves, our other needs are met, and we're on our way. Okay? So we're going to pair that to Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development, and it ranges from the age of infancy unto death. Okay? So your approximate age is infant to 18 months old. You're learning about trust versus mistrust. That's what you have to have at that level before you move into the next level. And actually, I take that back. Actually, as you move through Erikson's 8 stages, your body keeps growing. And we can't control that. We all have to grow unless our lifespan is cut short for some reason. But what we need to understand is that, have you ever met a person who was a full-grown adult and they act like they're 15 or 16 or 20 years old? It's like they're having a midlife crisis or whatever. You've seen people like that, right? Mm-hmm. So somewhere along in their pathway, I bet you 1,000 to 1, they've been wounded, and they're stuck at the level or at the age that they got wounded at. And this is what I tell my group that I mentor and that I minister to, is that if we don't go back and deal with the hurts where we first got wounded, we're not going to be able to recognize our perpetrators. We're not going to be able to move forward through any of these actual hierarchies. Okay? So let's go back to this. The 8 stages of development. Infant to 18 months old is trust versus mistrust. 18 months to 3 years is autonomy versus shame and doubt. 3 to 5 years, you're attaining your initiative versus guilt. 5 to 13 years old, you're going to become industrious, or you're going to feel inferior for whatever reason. And then 13 years to, I think it's 19 or 21, 13 to 21 is you're attaining your identity versus role confusion, if you have wounds there. 21 to 39 years old, you're able to have intimacy within your relationships versus being isolated. 40 to 65 years old, you're generatively versus you're industrious. It says generativity versus stagnation. So you're not stuck, basically. You're able to continue advancing. You're a lifelong learner. And 65 years older, it's ego integrity versus despair. So this is how that works. Let me tell you how that works. If you're looking at the screen, if you're looking at my screen, which I hope you can see, and if you can't see the screen, I'm gonna be sending this to Bonnie Grigger after this talk tonight, and you guys can reach out to her and she can provide that to you. But there's an umbrella over these 2 stages, or these 2 hierarchies that I was describing, Maslow's hierarchy of needs versus Erikson's 8 stages of development. And the more wounded we become, the more disassociated we become. What I proved in my dissertation, and don't shut off yet, this isn't just about scientific. We're going to go into the matters of the heart in a minute. But the more wounded we become, the more detached or disassociated we become because of our inability to deal with the pain. So what happens, and this is what I proved within my dissertation, is that how learning conditions are created, like ADD, ADHD, and I gave my professors a Likert scale of 1 to 10 about how a lot of these learning conditions, these students start becoming, most of them are wounded. And I did a survey, and I interviewed a lot of them, and I talked to a lot of them, and the majority of them, I found out, had been wounded at some time in their life with some type of trauma that they hadn't been dealt with yet. And so they became fragmented. They started.
Can I ask you, Dr. Missy?
Yeah.
Can you just give us a quick overview of the two terms you're using? I think I understand it, and I think most of us probably do. What fragmentation dissociation is? It's just like a general.
Sure. Fragmentation is when it's the heart, the soul, or the mind gets splintered. And I'm going to get into that in more depth as we talk about the issues of the heart and the mind after I break this down. But you're right. I probably need to discuss that right now. But it's when you go through trauma after trauma after trauma, this is what creates severe fragmentation. It's where the heart and the mind splinter, the personality or the identity splinter, and it breaks. It actually breaks. The psyche breaks. And it can get so broken to where the person starts living off of pieces of themselves instead of a whole sense of self. So that's why you feel like you don't know who you are anymore. You're like, I don't even know. I've been with this person for 25 years. I don't know who I am anymore. Well, of course you don't, because they probably wounded you, and there's been no reconciliation. There's been no accountability for the perpetrator's behavior unless you learn to stand up and set boundaries to where those types of things can stop, to where your heart and mind can get whole again. And that takes time. We get wounded over time. It's just like gaining weight. You gain weight over time, it's going to take you some time to lose it. Same with wounding. You get wounded, it's going to take you some time to get healing. So disassociation then is a detachment from your emotions because of the heart or the mind's inability to cope with reality. That's what that's about.
So you don't feel as much in it? You don't feel
your feelings? No, a lot of people have a real hard time connecting to their feelings, and so that's why they spend years and years in counseling, and it takes them years to get to the place where the break is at, and then they have a complete breakdown because they haven't been undergirded in their foundation spiritually. So that's where I come in, and I bring in the spiritual context with it, because we're doing both at the same time. We're going to be building your foundation and healing the heart and the mind, so they're both working through Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Erickson's 8 stages of development to put you back together again as a whole sense of self and giving you that whole sense of self.
So disassociation, I want to make sure. So even if something happy is going on right in front of you that you should be joyful about, you don't feel that. Is that sort of
That's
one
correct.
condition?
You don't.
Okay.
You have a hard time feeling anything. And then I think I did that. I went through years of that where you feel numb. I mean, you're just numb. And I think a lot of people, you see people get into addictions and patterns of drugging or anything like that, anything to do with an addiction. Any type of addiction. I had 8.5 years as a drug and alcohol counselor, and I used to always tell my clients out there that if you can't feel, you can't deal. So if you're a wounded person and you enjoy your alcohol or you get into extracurricular activities you shouldn't be involved in, that's something you might need to put down for a while, because you're going to have to feel in order to heal and move forward. It's just a given. It's a given. And so finishing up this diagram real quick before we move into matters of the heart, and I'm going to switch over to a PowerPoint presentation. I was talking about the learning conditions on a Likert scale of 1 to 10, ranging from 1 being ADHD, a 5 being autism, ASD now. And a 5 is actually where you start seeing the spiritual breaking, the disassociation, the splintering starts breaking at about a 5 on the Likert scale. And then 7 is where PTSD starts coming in and engaging with the person. And the worst case scenario breaks into schizophrenia, where the psyche breaks off into multiple personalities. And so I proved that in my dissertation, that is what that generates. And so the umbrella operates over the 2 stages of development, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Erickson's 8 stages of development, the 2 hierarchies. And then if trauma cycles continue, there's a circle, a broken line circle in the middle of the hierarchies. And it says trauma cycles hinder advancement. So the more the cycles operate, the longer they operate, the more broken the mind becomes. So this is why we see people that become homeless. They have mental breakdowns. And it's because this is how important it is to deal with the matters of the heart. I mean, it's critical. And so my biggest concern, I'm going to switch over to the PowerPoint now. My biggest concern is because abuse is becoming so prevalent in today's society as the new norm. And I'm like, no, that'll never be normal. That won't ever be acceptable in my eyes, and I won't ever accept it as acceptable. And matter of fact, I dealt with without getting too far into this, I was in a very abusive job with very abusive people. In my last job, where I was having to work and I was doing counseling and stuff on the side. And I ended up, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I got to enter into my field that I love, which is helping people with abuse. But it was something. It was unbelievably abusive, where people they'd get enraged at people and they couldn't control themselves, and they threatened to hit me sometimes. And I'm like, no. If you do that, my dad was special forces, and so I don't have a problem hitting you back. So not to be aggressive like that myself, but I'll stand up for myself. I've learned to stand up for myself. And so anyway, we're going to move on into this. It's called Getting Freedom and Healing from Controlling People and Staying Free. And let's see if it lets me maneuver. Yeah, it does. So I'm going to give you some traits of healthy people versus non-healthy people. And I've got it up on my screen if you can see that. But a healthy person, first of all, healthy people have the ability to reciprocate love, and they give love. They have a healthy sense of love, so they know that love is a give and a take. And it's always a reciprocal cycle going on between the two. So you're compromising on different things. You understand you're not self-centered. You understand what that means. The second thing a healthy person usually understands is that they focus on your strengths, and they help you to build up your weaknesses. They're always trying to help you be the best you possible. The third aspect of a healthy person is that they honor you as an individual. They understand what true love is. It's warm, unconditional love. I always talk about it. They're loyal, they're warm, loving people who honor, and they understand the warm, unconditional love of Christ. They understand that. It's not a religious thing. It's just a relational thing. And they understand that we all each have our moments of weakness, but they're still loyal enough to cover you in those moments of weakness. So that love on them honors you as a human being. And they always protect you from anybody that wants to dishonor you. They'll stand up for you. The fourth aspect of healthy loving is there's order and there's a sense of stability and security in the relationship. So now we're going to talk about non-healthy people, non-healthy love. So non-healthy people usually place themselves in a one-sided relationship on purpose, okay? And that's because they intend on being the main person that benefits from the relationship, and so they do all the taking. So they're I, me, my, mine thinkers. They're always thinking about their own needs. They're never thinking about the other person. And I always tell my people on my team that they always have to remember that love, true love, is always others-oriented. It's never about me, never. And healthy people, they understand that there's a giving and a taking, but they're always others-focused. So the non-healthy person also, number two, they're focused on your weaknesses as a person. They're going to be focused on their partner's weaknesses for the purpose of tearing them down further, because they want to control you. It's all about control with them, usually. An unhealthy person also has a spirit of dishonor, meaning they don't honor others. They don't even honor themselves. They don't respect others. They don't respect themselves. They don't respect boundaries. So they're always crossing boundaries and fighting. They're saying things they shouldn't say. And you have to remember that when you say certain things or do certain things to people, there are certain things you never say. There are certain things you never do in relationships, because you can never take it back. You can't. It's out there. The heart remembers, and it's a wound until you say, hey, please forgive me and I love you. That's what I always tell my people too. Those are the two most powerful tools you'll ever learn in life. If you want to heal a breach in a relationship, even if the person doesn't receive you or doesn't receive the, hey, please forgive me. If they say, I hate you, go away from me, I'm not ever going to forgive you, that's okay, because now you've done what God called you to do. And that's the spiritual bridge that can start the repair process in the spirit for it to manifest in the natural, because it will. It'll come back around, and then God can intervene and heal that heart. So they may not forgive you today, but they'll eventually forgive you if you operate with those tools. The fourth aspect of an unhealthy type of person in relating is that there's usually an atmosphere of complete chaos, strife, and tension. And the atmosphere around those relating with this person is just crazy. It's absolutely chaotic. So nobody ever feels safe relating with the perpetrator, or they don't even feel safe around them. The perpetrator might have addictions and compulsions, but you cannot fix them. You can't. It's a spiritual condition. So they have to want to change first, unless God intervenes and makes them change, which isn't, you don't want God intervening. That's all I can tell you about that. Let's see what we're doing here. Okay. Let me get to my next screen. Okay, your background. My background I've told a little bit about my background with abuse and control and manipulation, in that the individual was chaotic. They were inconsistent in love. They were selfish, and they were always a taker. Everything was always about them. And I always felt unsafe in the relationship because I never knew what I was going to encounter with the person. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to get when I came home. We lived together for about a year, and probably less than that, but because I was a dumb kid. But I eventually dreaded coming home, and I'd go to my parents' house, and one day my mom told me, she was like, why aren't you with so-and-so? Why aren't you with your boyfriend? And it just came out of my mouth. And I said, because I'm happier when I'm by myself, Mom, than I am when I'm with him. And I thought, bam, that was some truth that came out of my heart, because out of the heart, the mouth speaks. So I told her that, and then I left that atmosphere and that moment with my mom thinking, I need to pay attention to what's going on and what I'm saying here, because these are the desires of my heart coming out right now. I don't like being around this person. But anyway, the person was so controlling and manipulative. They were rude. They drove my friends away. Pardon me, they were a nasty human being, basically. They didn't respect themselves or me. And they always put me in these situations that were dangerous. I mean, and I'm not even going to be able to tell you what they are, but yeah, it was. And they would twist my words and leave me so confused in conversations, because I didn't understand. They would make big deals out of nothing. They were always wanting to argue, and then so they could spew their venom at me for whatever was going on in their life. And because I was so naive I didn't have a whole lot of experience in dating, I guess, at that moment, at that time in my life. And so I was just exposed to it. But they struggled with addiction issues. The person had a drinking problem and a drug problem, and then they made me feel like I was the problem when I tried to hold them accountable. And after about 5 years, I just came to a place, because I'd never experienced that before in my life, and I refused to be berated anymore or disrespected, and especially abused. And I realized how abusive their behavior was, and so I started standing up. And that's actually what led them to almost kill me one night with a person. I stood up to them because I was so sick and tired of it. And I was living with the guy at the time, and he came home, and he was angry. He was always angry, And I just stood up, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. You're not going to talk to me like this. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And he proceeded to throw me across the couch, and then he dragged me by the hair and sat on me and tried to choke me to death. And then ended up kicking me in the ribs all the way out the door, where my neighbor, thank God for my neighbor, was standing there. Her name was Becky. And she saw the whole thing, and she looked right at him, and she said, I'm calling the police right now. And I thought, thank God, because I had broken ribs at that point. And so anyway, I managed, he ran inside, and I managed to get myself down the stairs into my car, hurt. And I went home to my mom. And long story short, the next day I went to my best friend's house, and I had huge bruises on my neck. I had bruises all over me. And my best friend looked at me, and these were her exact words. This is what woke me up. She looked at me because I'd always been the one that had it together, and I was always the one before that point that looked out for everybody else. And she looked at me and she said, Melissa, what the hell? She said, what are you thinking? She goes, what is wrong? She goes, I cannot believe you would let somebody, anybody, treat you like this. And it was like, boom, I was wide awake at that point. And so at that point, my life changed, and I went the next day with my mother, and she helped me move every bit of my things out, and I never looked back. I actually at that point was engaged to the person. I never even broke off my engagement. I just started dating somebody else, and I never looked back, and the person tried to keep track of me through friends and trying to befriend my friends and all that kind of crap, which is a bunch of garbage when they do that, because it's a stalking type of behavior. And it's unhealthy. It's just very unhealthy. So let's go. Let's talk about the setup for fragmentation and brokenness of the heart, and what keeps us surrounding ourselves with healthy people versus unhealthy people. And before I go into that, I'm going to tell you something. I always tell my clients this when I was counseling clients and stuff like that, but people would come to me, my clients would come to me, and they're like, I'm thinking about dating this person, and thinking about getting married, or I'm thinking about doing this. And I was like, well, before you do that, I want you to put your barometer, your health barometer, your mental health barometer in the water before you do that. And I want you to kind of feel around you for what types of people you're drawing to yourself, because you can kind of see what level of mental health you're at by the types of people you're drawing to yourself. Because like draws like, we draw people to ourselves that are like ourselves at every level of mental health. So you can kind of look around you and look at your playmates and your playgrounds where you're currently at. And that'll be a determining factor of telling you where you are emotionally. Are you always drawing people that are telling you the problems? Are you always drawing people that are deeply broken and their lives are chaotic? Or they're trying to drag you in to their chaos? And if they are, this might be a good time for you to make a list of, hey, I might need to make new friends and make some changes. And that is essential to healing, by the way, because you're either going to, the people that we draw to ourselves are like ourselves. And so if we want to move upward and we want to get a healing, we've got to get a new playground. We have to get a new playground. And nobody likes change, especially at our age. I'm 52. I'm not ashamed of it. I like getting older. But at our age, though, I mean, who wants to deal with that at our age? But I believe this is also why people stay in horrible marriages. They stay in abuse and they stay in bad relationships because of low self-esteem, and they think, well, I've got all this time invested. Well, you know what? And I don't advocate divorce, by the way. I think people, if you have someone that's willing to work through issues and go to counseling or even Christian counseling and work on love issues, because if we're willing to get help and we're willing to practice love and start getting disciplined about how love behaves and what love looks like, we have to first have an understanding of what true, warm, unconditional love looks like. If you have that in your background, if you've been raised with that, which I was really blessed to have had that be, I came from a very loving family, which gave me a foundational piece, a spiritual marker, if you will, to gauge the truth from a lie with, so that when I engaged this unhealthy person, I was thinking, hey, back up, Jackson. That's not what I was raised with. I don't know what you were raised with, but I'm starting to see it. And and that was the truth. That was really what he had been raised around. So he was just emulating his parents' behavior because that was his normal. That was his normal. And so these types of behaviors travel down through generations because people emulate what they think is right. And so we come into these types of families and these types of situations, and so that doesn't mean it doesn't make it right, doesn't make it truth. So we have to be able to recognize them before we step into them. And if we have the ability, we have to have the courage, and if we need help, get accountability, get people who will stand with you to step out of them in order to have healthy mental health. So what keeps us surrounding ourselves with healthy, loving people? It's when those relationships allow us to be free to move into healthy relationships, whether it be friendship, with our families, because of the healthy markers I just specified to you guys. There are relationships where we learn to set strong boundaries against unhealthy relationships, and we hold people accountable because that's acceptable. We know that's right. We hold people accountable for their childish, selfish behaviors because true love allows for growth where brokenness leaves people in the past of their past hurt. So brokenness basically allows people to stay in denial. It allows them to be selfish, be childish, to where everybody else has to succumb to all this chaos in their life, has to succumb to all their dysfunctional behaviors. So healthy relationships, loving people, have learned to progress and work through issues, to learn to deal with their broken areas in their hearts and in their minds. And they've learned the truth from a lie about how true love behaves. And we're willing to deal with our past and move on. That's what we're doing. We put the past in the past. Once we've dealt with the hurt, we've reconciled it, we're willing to move on. We don't get stuck there. But we put away all childlike ways and we allow God to heal us from the inside out till we become functional again. Have you ever heard of the scripture that says, when I was a child, I acted as a child, but now that I've become a man or a woman, I put away all childlike ways? That's what I tell my clients. Are you willing to put away your childlike ways? Because I'll observe the person's behavior and I'll be like, hey, you got this, this, and this, and I've watched you interact here with other clients because we had to do it in a treatment center setting. And if they're throwing fits and they're getting in rages over nothing, that's pretty much a pretty good indicator that person's immature and's got a trauma somewhere in their background. So they're stuck at that age and they need to go back and deal and revisit that hurt so that they can move forward. So moving forward, what draws us to perpetrators? What draws us as individuals to perpetrators? If we've been healthy or unhealthy in our past. So what draws us is we're open to abuse when we've had abuse in our own family backgrounds. We're automatically subject to it because that's our normal. We think that's normal. So number two is if all we've ever known was abuse, most likely we'll gravitate into unhealthy relating until that spirit, it's a spirit. I want to tell you this too, because you're a spirit, God's a spirit, the devil's a spirit, okay? A body without a spirit is dead. We agree on that. Even a church body, you run into dead churches, and I'm not going to go too far into that, but abuse is a spiritual condition, but it can be broken off so that we can learn the truth about how true love behaves and start practicing it. So we're actually practicing God because God is love. We agree on that, right? So we have to understand love's characteristics. Love is patient. Love is kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. It's long-suffering. And so when you have the fruit of the Spirit, I call that the fruit of the Spirit, then your heart is able to step back when it's engaging unhealthy people and saying, that's not love. I'm not stepping into that trap, kind of a thing. And so anyway, the third tactic is that past abuse. If you've got past abuse in your life, like I have, sexual, physical, emotional, or verbal, to where our self-esteem has been beat down, we don't always have boundaries set in place. We don't always have healthy guidelines to understand what's unhealthy, what's not, because that's all we've ever known as well. And so, and also if we see ourselves as broken, I always tell people too that if you see yourself as broken, you're automatically like draws like, so you're going to draw other broken people to yourself. The fourth aspect of what draws us to perpetrators or what draws perpetrators to us is that if we refuse healing, we stay in denial, and we demand to remain childish, which affects every aspect of our thinking and living. So, let me see. With that, oh, there it is. Thank you. Because most wounded people, I've already said, are stuck at an age, mentally and emotionally, that they were deeply wounded at. So their bodies may have grown up, but emotionally they're still dealing with a life at the age that they first got deeply wounded. So until the soul wound is healed, fragmentation healing can't be allowed to happen because they have to go back and revisit the first wound. So people stay stuck going from relationship to relationship because people refuse to tolerate their childishness. Have you ever met somebody who's been through multiple marriages, and this isn't to dog people who have been through divorce or experienced that type of hurt, because that's hurtful for anybody. And sometimes we can't always control other people's behaviors. Sometimes people leave us because of their own unhealthy thinking or their unhealthy behaviors. But if you ever have experienced somebody who's gone through multiple marriages, chances are they're stuck and they've got some past trauma going on that they're refusing to deal with. And so they're just thinking, well, I'll just go to the next person. Maybe they'll love me. Maybe they'll love me, without going back and realizing that, well, maybe they're not. Because if you don't decide to change, people don't like dealing with dysfunction. And the more, I really believe in today's society, that society has gotten to where we're becoming more and more intolerant of other people's mess and other people's garbage than we've ever been before, yet nobody seems to know what to do about it. And so there's a key to that. So we're going to talk about what happens to the heart and the soul when we have to endure abuse. It's the beginning of fragmentation. I told you a little bit about it a while ago. Pardon me. But I want to discuss that there's a breaking and a splintering that occurs in our thinking and our emotions and our spiritual ability to discern truth from a lie. And I always tell my clients, too, if you understand what discernment gives you as a gift, discernment is really, really key in your relating, because I call it your picker. Your ability to pick relationships, your ability to maneuver in and out of relationships. Like you may be at work and you'll encounter somebody and they're a rageaholic or whatever, or your boss is one of these people that they're like a spiritual schizophrenic, I call them, where they're happy one minute, sad the next, and you're their kind of person that they go off on. And I'm like, oh, I had a boss like that, actually, that's why I say that. But your picker, I used to always tell this boss, I was actually really fortunate in my last job because my boss let me minister to her, and I got to take her through deep inner healing exercises, which was really cool because I got to practice my love at work. And so I would tell her, your picker is off, so-and-so. You don't have a single eye of focus, as Dr. Mark Sharona says. He's a psychologist. He's also my past pastor. But so what happens when you don't have a single eye of focus? Your faith gets scattered, your mind gets scattered, your heart gets scattered, the light within you, the light is the light of Christ, gets scattered. So nothing we do, we're so scattered and broken, we're living off pieces of ourselves, remember I said that earlier, to where we don't know who we are anymore. So you've got to get that single eye of focus back, that working on a sense of self, your healthy self-esteem, to where this all comes into alignment again, to where you start knowing who you are again. So the scattering expands itself into your thinking, into your discernment, into the matters of your heart. And so you get confused where your picker and your relationship selector can't select the right people to hang around. You can't see the true fruit of a person's heart anymore, so your discernment becomes blinded, and more unhealthy relating types are able to enter in around you to wound you further. Don't you think it's time to start evaluating that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really that's essential. And so the longer you stay within, this is why it's so important to realize that the longer you stay within abusive relationships, the more broken you become, the more scattered you become. Your relating, your perception becomes skewed to where you start seeing life through a dysfunctional lens. Have you ever heard the cliche that perception is reality? and the person thinks their reality is okay, their reality and the way they deal with you, even though they're emotionally beating you up every day. Some people may be hitting you physically, but it's okay because that's their reality. Well, no, it's not okay. It's never okay to strike anybody. If a person does not have more self-discipline than that, then they need help. They need help. My past relationships where this person struck me motivated me so much, I went and learned Krav Maga where no person will ever strike me again. And I know how to defend myself now. It's just so important that people understand that that is not acceptable. So the skewed dysfunctional lens, that skewed dysfunctional perception causes you then at that point to see everyone as against you instead of for you, like healthy love would. Healthy love, let me tell you about healthy love too. Healthy love covers a multitude. In the Bible it says it covers a multitude of sin. So it covers the weaknesses of other people. It's not making, believe me, it does not make excuses. Jesus never made excuses for the Pharisees. He called them, he said, you tomb of dead men's bones. He ripped them up one side and down the other. He walked through the temple and he had a cat of nine tails and he was whipping them upside one end and down the other because they were making a mockery of what love was supposed to be, the temple of God. And God will not be mocked. He will not have his good name mocked. He will not have himself and what love is mocked. So I tell it to my clients. And so for you, instead of you and your healthy relationships being healthy and continuing and advancing and moving through the cycles of life in a healthy manner, they turn sour because of wrong perceptions that we begin to tolerate and live through, and we start living life out of our insecurities instead of that place of truth. Go ahead.
Can we ask a question?
Sure.
Well, it's interesting that you're talking about the scattered view. I always wondered why. I saw the similarity in the people that I chose, the predators or the perpetrators, seem to always be exactly the opposite of me: strong, charming, confident, one not scattered. Is there something to that? I was not that. I was not, confident. I did feel scattered. I didn't feel strong opinion, so I fed off of their it seemed like strength and charm too. Mm-hmm. Is that common in these predator perpetrators, that they seem that way, strong and not scattered? So that's
Mine was actually too, because I had low self-esteem, and so what that really comes from. Let me tell you like this. This is what my pastor told me at one time. He told me, he said, Missy, if I know more about you than you know about you, then I can control you. He said, but if you know more about you than I know about you, meaning you know your trigger points, you know your weaknesses, then nobody can control you. And so that usually what I find is, because my ex was like that too, is that he was the strong type A personality, and I have this, and I actually, what I've learned about myself over the years is I am a type A personality too, which I did not know. I thought I was more meek and just didn't like confrontation, when it's really my strongest asset and my strongest gift is what I say basically. But in reality, the truth of the matter, you know what I learned about him? Was that he wasn't as strong as I thought he was. Not at all. He actually was such a broken human being that he's been married now, I think 3 times, 2 or 3 times. And not to dog that, that's none of my business, but in the sense that he doesn't work through issues. He just goes to the next thing. He drops it and he just pushes it off and saying, well, it's always your fault. It's your problem. You didn't accept me. You didn't love me. So I'll just go find somebody who will. And that's their attitude. It's kind of a narcissistic type of behaving and their thinking, where they think, well, it's always you. It's never me. There is never. It's like there's never this sense of accountability, that they actually acknowledge the bad behaviors. And so until they're literally broken, I mean broken, to the point where they have nowhere else to look but up, so they start really looking inward and doing a self-eval and saying, maybe I am the problem. Maybe I need to look at myself and how I've treated these past relationships. To this day, my perpetrators never said they were sorry. He's never said he was sorry. He's never acknowledged his bad behaviors. I had to write about it in a book to even get it out, get my healing out. I don't know if that was. And I did it. That was the reason why I wrote my book, Memoirs of an ADHD Mind, was to get it out and to tell somebody my story to hopefully help somebody to never go through that ever again, because it was so bad. I mean, it was just so bad. And I never, and it put fear in me about relating in the future with people. So I've been really, really guarded about who I let in my spheres of influence. And that's another story for another day. But let's move on. Anybody got any other questions? You need a break or anything? You okay?
Maybe just questions at this point?
Yeah. Anybody got some questions for me? Let's unmute people real quick. Let's see. Anybody got some questions for me? You're all unmuted. No?
A lot of people with no questions. All right, I have a question.
Okay, what's your number? And I'm gonna mute everybody else so I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, a lot of feedback. This is Bonnie again. I've been taking so many notes.
Okay, hang on, Bonnie. Okay, Bonnie, you're unmuted. Was it you? Hello? Oh, wait. Let me do it up here. Bonnie?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm very interested in getting that first slide because, I feel like I have some real limitations in some areas, and since there was abuse maybe three times, trauma in my life, you're saying that the milestone of that age will be lost if you have a major trauma at that point, and that's what you'll be missing. Is that what I was understanding?
No, actually, when you recognize your cycles of abuse, okay? Mm-hmm. So your cycles, I call them seasons of abuse, however long they lasted. Mine lasted for 5 years with my perpetrator. The sexual abuse cycle lasted 3 years. I've had other cycles go on. But what I needed to find out was the first time. I needed to go back to the very, very first time I'd been abused, which mine was sexual. So I had to go back to that first time and work through my heart issues, my issues of the heart, and find out what my fears were. Okay? Because what happens is perpetrators, this is an excellent opportunity to talk about this. Perpetrators, controllers, manipulators are perpetrators. Anybody that wants to control you actually get their power from the fears on your life. So if you let God heal your fears, perfected love casts out all fear. So the more loving we are, the more we know who we are in God, the more we understand our identity, the less fear we're going to have, because it's being pushed out through the truth of who we really are in Christ. Okay, that means we know who we are, we know why we've been put here, we have identity, we're getting our self-esteem healed, and so the brokenness is being healed. Okay, so the perpetrator comes in. Say that you have gone through some healing. I'll use myself as an example because this is easier for me to explain because I've been there. I spent 20 years letting God heal me. Okay, I didn't realize how many fears I had. I had tremendous, huge amounts of fear, to where I was intimidated by everybody. I was intimidated by standing up for myself. I'd come into contact with controlling, manipulative people. They'd run over me like a doormat, and I'd let them because I didn't know who I was. So I started getting those issues of my deepest wounding, when the wounding first started, when I was sexually abused. And I went back to that area and I started looking at what was I afraid of in that moment. Because I felt like I had no control. I felt like somebody else was allowed to come in and touch my person without my consent. And so I moved on and advanced on through life thinking that was acceptable, that everybody had that same that they had those same rights towards me. And until I put my foot down and said, no, you don't. You don't have any right to touch me in an ungodly way. You don't have a right to speak to me like that. You don't have a right to abuse me emotionally or verbally like that. You don't have the right. Who do you think you are? And holding people accountable, which is what I started doing when I broke up with my ex. I put my foot down. I'd had enough. And so, but I had to go back and recognize what the fears were in the first trauma. What did I feel like I had lost in that first hurt? Because when you can identify that, you're going to set, that's exactly, when you can identify those fears, the strong men, those are strong men, I call them strong men, they're being released off your life. They're forced to go, so to speak. And you're no longer held bound by those fears anymore when you can identify them. So then you're able to advance into these other relationships with a higher sense of self. And you're not as afraid of confronting. You're not as afraid. You don't feel as controlled because you realize the truth from the first wounding. Does that make sense?
I think so, yes.
Am I going too deep? I'll use you as an example. I'll take you through a deep inner healing session here real quick if you have a second. Let me get through this and we'll take you through and I'll explain it to you right off the bat. What is our time like right now? Am I going too far or too long?
Well, it's an hour now, so I think that's what we set up, or maybe I think a little longer. Was it 8:30?
Yeah.
So I think we have some more time, but that's probably 8:30 would be
the high point.
Anyone else can stay on if they like. I just have to get the kids to bed. My kids, not everybody has kids.
I understand. Okay, so let me wrap this up then, and then maybe we can come back another day. But I can call you back, Bonnie, and I can take you through that because I think that would really just be a tremendous. I take my team through this all the time. By the way,
I'd love to. I'd love to do the step, but the actual process. Would love to do that. Real steps to figure stuff out like that would be amazing.
Heck yeah. You know what? Yeah. Maybe we can do that again. Maybe we can come back and just have people come on here who want to walk through that and who want to volunteer to be a guinea pig, and I can take them through that because I'm telling you, it works. It's 100% effective, and you'll walk away a different person. So it's amazing.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I would love to, because I really haven't found any. I haven't found any steps really. I mean, I haven't really started, so that would be great for me, and I'm sure everybody else does. Definitely Savannah Healing, and I'm sure your peeps. So surely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you know what I'll do? I'll hold it. I will commit my time tonight with this group, the same group that's on here. If you're interested in coming back for another night, I'll do it for free. And we'll come on, say, we want to do it in 2 weeks? Do you want to do it in a week? When do you want to do it?
Let's 2 weeks would be absolutely perfect. This gives us some time to just prepare and whatnot. Yeah, absolutely.
That's fine.
That would be
let's plan on Thursday, 2 weeks from today, Thursday night, and then we're going to meet back up here at the same number at the same time. So 7 o'clock EST time, and then I want you guys to, those of you who want to go through the process, I can probably we'll spend about an hour and a half. I can probably do 5 to 6 people, maybe, working you through that process in about an hour and a half. But in between then, I want those 5 people, whoever they are, or however many of you want to do it, I'll try to do as many as I can. Email Bonnie, I am Bonnie, and tell her who you are. And then I want you to do this. I want each of you to think about this between now and that time. I want you to go back to the first time you were ever severely wounded that you can remember right now in your spirit and in your heart. And I want you to go and write out everything you felt in that moment, every fear you felt in that moment, what that made you feel like. And I want you to make a circle, put yourself in the middle of the circle, and then right around the circle, write out every fear you felt. Okay? And then I want you to bring that back with you in 2 weeks, and we're going to take you through some deep inner healing. We're going to break this stuff off, and through prayer, and it's 100% effective 100% of the time. You mark my word, you'll walk away a different person. Okay?
Great.
Awesome.
No, thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
It's my privilege. I love doing this. This is my passion. So let me wrap this up real quick, and I'll get you guys on your way. So further breakdowns, we've talked about further breakdowns and abuse, and we've talked about that. People around you are hurt. So you've heard of the thing, hurting people hurt people. So this is why people, the first step to getting free is that we have to understand who we are so that we can put the boundaries in place so that we stop getting hurt by these people that are so broken. And so I'm trying to find out where I'm at here. Okay. So the cycle of change, let's go through the cycle of change. The first step to getting free is remembering why we become who we hang around. This includes unhealthy church members, family members, friends, romantic interests. So we need to prepare ourselves to find new playmates and new playgrounds. And then we start dealing with the cycle of change. So you say you want change. If you really want it, you need to get away from the broken people because we become who we hang around. We need to seek out inner healing through a healthy church or a loving group of people so that true love and accountability or acceptance can bring the healing that we need. We need to be open to learn about love, what true love is, how it behaves, what it thinks like, and be willing to practice it. We need to be willing to say no, and this is a hard one. Being able to say no to people and stand up to people is the hardest thing you'll ever do sometimes because they're going to give you some kickback. So you've got to be ready for that, and you've got to be ready to challenge that right back and say, no, I said no. No means no. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. So you need to be a very, very clear communicator there, and you need to be willing to walk away from people who aren't willing to change, even if that's in church, in your family, at work, what have you, because abuse is abuse. And so people that truly love and respect you, you have to remember this, they're not going to treat you like this. So adults that respect other adults are people that love in a healthy manner. People that demand to stay childish usually stay stuck and they stay in dysfunction. So you got to be willing to make those changes. And we have to be open to new ways of healing, guys. We've come a million miles from where we used to be as a society. And I believe, not everybody's willing to grow up and learn discipline and respect and deal with their areas of needed healing, but we can do that. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. And so God always makes a way where there is no way. And he does this now through deliverance prayers. You've heard about deliverance ministry, deep inner healing sessions, which we're fixing to do in 2 weeks for you guys. People seek secular counseling. They seek out self-help books. But the difference between the two, and I'll just tell you this point blank, you can do it the fast way. You can go through healing the fast way, which is through deliverance and deep inner healing sessions, or you can do it the slow way. And I'm not dogging either one. I'm just being honest with you. I'm not criticizing the other way. But I'm just telling you, I'm all about time because I don't know how much of I have. And so I want to get over it and get on with it. I want to get happy. I don't want to be sad for a long time and be dragging out years of counseling like I once did for 5 years. And I'm just thinking, no, enough of that. Get me over this thing and get me on with my life. So that's why.
Cognitive?
Pardon me?
Is that called cognitive? I remember vaguely the different types of therapy. One's that long-term, 5-10 years, and then there's cognitive steps. Is that sort of what you're saying? There's processes.
It is. It deals with your cognitive development, and it deals with the things in your heart. But the problem is things of the spirit are different from the things in your heart, and so things in the spirit are really, really real. And so that's what we're going to do with deep inner healing sessions. It's not some weird thing. I just pray over you. We ask you to renounce some things, break them off, and you feel that immediate shift. You'll feel it immediately. You'll sense it immediately. And then the days afterwards will unfold. Pardon me. And a lot of you have heard the testimony of my person that's on my team. She's one of many. She's one of 15 people that are on my team, by the way. And they've all grown so fast in the last 6 or 7 months that, I mean, it's just amazing, the transformation process. I love seeing that, by the way. And so that's what my degree is in. So anyway, we need to remain lifelong learners and be pliable and adaptable in the hands of a loving God. And we need to practice love and in order to see the changes that we desire. And so the most important thing I want to tell you guys before we wrap up is that never, never, never let any situation or relationship talk you into the lie that God isn't good, that love isn't good, that love is something you don't want to try again because of people that refuse to change or people that try to keep you under their thumb through their own hurts and their own trauma. And so because God's heart towards every one of you is that you would mature, that you'd come into wholeness, and that you would reach destiny because of the dreams that he placed into many of your hearts as young kids. And so a lot of you, I can guarantee you, have had dreams that have been stifled because of abuse and because of not knowing who you are. But if you'll allow me the privilege to minister to you and to take you through that process, you're going to see a brand new tomorrow. I guarantee you. I promise you that. So with that, I want to give the table back over, or the platform back over to Bonnie. And Bonnie, again, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here tonight. I hope you guys have enjoyed it.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Dr. Missy. I got to tell you how inspiring you've been for me in just such a short amount of time. You just opened my mind and eyes up to, not only the psychological or part of it, but the spiritual part, which I truly believe I've been missing. I haven't been including that in trying to heal. And your authentic voice and everything is just beautiful. And I want to thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I can't wait to meet with you next in 2 weeks for the Deep Inner Healing. That would be wonderful.
I'm excited about that. And actually, too, Bonnie, I'm probably going to get a hold of you on the side, and I'll do yours individually. So we have more time, and we can spend that other time just on the peeps. Again, guys, not to interrupt you either, Bonnie, but again, I can probably stay on. I'll stay on as long as I can to work with each one of you. We have 13 people on the call tonight. And I don't really want to advertise this because I want to make sure I can help every one of you as best I can. But if you will write out a circle, write your name in the middle of the circle, and go back to the first time you were ever deeply wounded. And I want you to write out every fear that you felt in that moment, okay? And you're going to bring that back in 2 weeks on a Thursday night at 7 p.m. EST at the same number. And then we're going to take you through the process, and we're going to get you on your way. And I guarantee you will experience a change like you've never experienced before. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to get off now, but of course feel free to continue on, of course. And thank you again, and everybody on the group.